not that I find anything wrong with going to school. Of course, school is very important, but I've managed to do all of this by just getting my hands dirty.
Welcome to Machine Shop Tech Talk. Now, the manufacturing and the trades, we need more people in it. And one of the things that I'm a big advocate for is the sense of fulfillment we can find working with our hands, creating in the physical realm. Today, I am meeting with my friend Lahra, and we're going to talk about her journey. You could come from anywhere and end up working in the trades. You might be in your 30s right now listening to this episode like, man, I really hate my desk job. Well, good news for you. Check out, we're going to talk to Lahra and see what she's learned. Lahra, thank you so much for being here today.
Good morning, Arthur. I'm happy to be here.
What do you do right now? And then we'll kind of go backwards to how you got here.
Currently, I'm in metal fabrication, which is a pretty broad term. Most people assume that means welding, right? You're welding something. But really, welding and fabrication is just such a minor part of it. So mostly in my work, I run the CNC machines, the press brake, the plas table. I also do all the finish work for my company.
That's got to bring in a lot of variety to your day, hey?
It's what I love. It's part of why I love the trades. Every day is different.
That's awesome. I love the versatility there, just the variety. But you didn't start here. It's not like you've been in this role since you started working. So how did you first get into the trades? Like, did you start right out of high school, or what does that look like?
Well, that's actually really interesting. And I grew up in the 90s, went to high school in the 90s, and it's not as though women were not allowed in these things. They just weren't really introduced to them. It's what people don't know is out there. And when I was in high school, I never even considered something in the trades. It never crossed my mind. When I was about 19 years old, I was losing my job as a receptionist, and I went looking for a job, and I ended up at a boat shop, a fiberglass boat shop that made yachts. And I asked if they hired girls, and they said, well, sure. So I went in there, and I was a little surprised by what I was seeing, all the tools and everything. And at the end of the day, after all my hard work, they popped a yacht out of a mold. And it was remarkable. There's something there after I've worked so hard, and it will be here, for a very long time. That was in 1999 when I started in the trades.
And now you're in metal fab, right? Like, it's not a linear path either.
Absolutely.
It sounds, and I'd love to hear more about just the love of creation that's kind of fueled your path. Because even that first moment you shared with us where you just popped the boat out and you're like, oh my God, this thing's going to exist now. Other people are going to use this thing. It's going to be in the world for a while. That, to me, it speaks a lot to is like a sense of like accomplishment, or like, I did that. Like, I am capable. That's really, I love that they said sure. Like, back in 99, not as many companies were saying sure.
Yeah, well, it's not that the companies wouldn't say sure. I would say more or less it's the other people involved, right? A lot of the men in the shop were really so keen on having, especially a young woman in there. But luckily, times are changing, and I've been met with nothing but love these days. So it's been great.
That's good. What did you go into after the boat building?
All right, so my journey's a little interesting there. I got pregnant with my first son, and I do fiberglass, so I quit. And when it was time to go back to work, I had to find something new. I realized really maybe fiberglass wasn't for me. I didn't really love it. I loved the result, but maybe fiberglass wasn't it for me. So I got into braze welding, like fine metals, coppers, and things like that, making heat exchangers. I did that for a few years.
It's your love of creation. You can still go make things with your hands. The heat exchangers are going to do valuable work. Do you know what can you say what the heat exchangers were going into, or?
They were going into boats, all different sizes and shapes. And it was mostly just what I took from there was some minor machining and braze welding skill, which I value to this day.
So you were there for a few years. Where did you go from there?
So I got pregnant with my second child.
Yeah.
And when it was time to go back to work, I decided to maybe go back I was thinking, well, I'm going to go to school. I'm going to find something interesting to me and go to school for it. And I decided precision machining was intriguing to me. I went through steps to go to college and realized I couldn't really afford to pay my mortgage and also go to school. So I had a friend who owned a machine shop, and he said, yeah, bring her in, I'll take her on. And because of that wonderful man, I learned a very valuable skill of machining, manual lathes, manual mills, also CNC mills and lathes.
machining is near and dear to my heart. That's where I spent over 12 years, and then I worked into supporting machine shops. So I love that you got the experience there. But I also, it's really interesting that, after each childbirth, you're taking that opportunity to just see where you can apply yourself. And it's not like the stuff you've done before that became irrelevant either. Did you see any like crossover yourself as you're like learning things? You're like, oh, it's kind of like this or it's kind of like that.
You said the machines, that
Yeah.
would be helpful. Also, braze welding came into play in machining. If something brass or copper came in with a void in it, we could fill the void,
Yeah.
machine it. It took a lot of the struggles of machining out of it, some of it. You know how that goes.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and to those that are listening that may not be familiar, when you're working with those alloys in your machining, they have something called porosity, and there can be holes and little bubbles and little things that you don't want on an unfinished machine product. So being able to braze, like Laura is saying, is actually a hugely valuable skill to get a really nice finish and a really nice part without having to just chuck that material away. That's a really cool little like workaround to make that happen. How long did you do the machining thing? Did you stay at that shop? Did you try machining at different shops or?
Well, I mostly stayed at the same shop, but I
Yeah.
was been pregnant with my third child, and I tried to do machining while I was pregnant, and it just really didn't
Yeah.
work. So I then left the field. I tried another sort of a smaller shop that had less parts, but it still I couldn't do it pregnant. So that's where my journey in machining itself ended.
So you went on to another child, which I love that you're a strong woman and a mother and also very trades focused and a career woman as well. And you found this way to blend it, right? Not a lot of people could do that dance. So where did you go from there then after your third?
Well, then I had a fourth baby in that time
Okay.
frame.
There you go.
So after I had my fourth child, it was time to go back to work. The machine shop I was at could no longer take me, so it was time to find something new. I looked at that time, there wasn't all these wonderful hiring apps and things like that. So it was to the newspaper I went and I found a company. They hired me to do their quality control. And while I
Okay.
was there, they needed a press brake operator. So they put me on the press brake. I picked it up really fast, and then they told me, "Well, I guess you're the press brake operator." I have formed oodles of things, and that is actually something I loved. I called it metal origami. It's
Yeah.
very challenging and very rewarding.
I really like just the variety that you've been able to have in your career path,
Very much.
right? How you've been able to weave it all together. I'll probably mention it again. I know I've already said it, but it's just such there's so many opportunities in manufacturing or in the trades. You don't get stuck. Like if you go to school to be a dental hygienist, you're a dental hygienist till you go back to school, okay? There's not a lot of flexibility in that role.
Very
Now,
true.
they're super important. I love my dental hygienist. Like they're very important people, but you go to school for there, you do one thing. Whereas you've been able to go to all these different roles and take all of these different creative abilities. I love it.
Wanted to add on to that, I have also, not that I find anything wrong with going to school. Of course, school is very
Yeah.
important, but I've managed to do all of this by just getting my hands dirty, having somebody that would believe in me to show me how to do it, and me taking the initiative. I will say I've ruined a lot of things. There's been a lot of stuff in the classroom, a lot of broken tools, but
Yeah.
it was a very valuable education that I hold dear to me, and I'm grateful for every man that showed me that. Very, very grateful.
Yeah, there's a lot of forgiveness when you're learning new things. I mean, everyone's got their emotions and their tempers and all of that stuff. I love that it's just part of the process in the trades. At least it's been for me, and it sounds like it's been for you, where, yeah, you're going to muck stuff up, but you're going to learn from it and you're going to do better next time. And that's really the end goal.
It's better than any school, any education a school could give you, I believe. At least for me.
Oh,
From
yeah, for me too.
yeah, see, metal origami. That's where that's something. Well, that company, due to things I'm not really aware of, they were no longer able to practice in the area, and they decided to move shop. Decided to not go with them, and in the time of taking the shop down and sort of moving all the stuff out, one of our customers came in and sort of offered me a job or said that they needed a press brake operator at that shop and
Yeah,
also a plasma CNC operator and if I would be interested.
nice.
And so
Okay.
my interview consisted of, Laura, can you run a crane? And I said, well, no. And he said, well, you're hired. So I learned to run a crane really fast. That was a very important part of my job. But yeah, and then I went on to basically cutting the shapes I needed to form and form the shapes. For a shop that is not a production shop, but more of a one-off situation.
So you got to lay it all out on the plasma table, cut it all out, and then bend it up into your little origami figures.
A lot of staircases and a lot of channels, but we made some very, very beautiful things.
The plasma table was also still CNC, and you were already running machining a few jobs before that.
That's
Did
right.
that help you at all when you were learning the plasma?
Yes, I'm so grateful for all my CNC training. It made it very easy to jump right on that machine and learn it.
Perfect. So there's no huge learning curve now. You already had it in your past. That's very cool.
I will say a plasma table, at least the one we had, definitely had a learning curve. Those things have a mind of their own. But I conquered it.
Yeah, that can do attitude, right? That you clearly have been showing your whole career. Because plasma tables, for anyone that's not like, they have a whole bunch of blowout angles and all the different like chamfers you got to figure out. And I've never personally run one. Thankfully, I've heard they can be a bit of a bear, but
They're
you've got a
not.
smile on your face while you're talking about it. So
Yeah, well, it's not a laser, and unfortunately, people wish it was. It doesn't have the quality of that, so you have to make do with it and do a lot of grinding.
a lot of slag. I had to grind a lot of those.
Yeah.
At that place, you said you were making a lot of staircases, a lot of ornamental, a lot of one-off things. What was next in your journey, or is that modern day? I don't know how many shops we
Yeah.
got here.
So that's currently where I'm at.
Okay,
Yeah,
okay.
yeah. Ta-da! 25 years later, and that's what I'm doing. And my love has transferred from the CNC machines and the machining and all of those things to more of a love of finish work.
So, what about the finish work appeals to you about it? Like, what's the process look like that has you feeling so fulfilled about it?
I suppose after all the fabrication, all the work, and all, no matter how beautiful the part you made is, if the finish looks bad, the whole part looks bad. So I just, and it's an art form, so it's more patination. I do a lot of patination, and in that is
Okay.
its own art form. It turns really basic steel and basic copper and basic all materials into something beautiful, into something interesting.
Hmm. There's so many things that you can do when you're working in the trades, right? And you can find different specializations. Like, you really love the finish work. Some people really love like the dirty end of that equation. They like doing all the rough-in and everything else. What's next for you in this journey? Have you thought of next steps? Are you planning a move? What's that look like?
So my next move involves branching out on my own. I'm going to be brave and sort of dive into the world of metal finish and restoration. I'm just getting older, and hucking around quarter-inch plate these days is getting a little tougher. My back's starting to
Yeah.
hurt. So I think I'm ready to just try something else. And
Hmm.
there's a market for what I do, and I'm going to dive into it, see what happens.
Well, that's really cool. So, when does that all start for you? Do you have a start date?
I've started right now. If anybody needs something black, and give me a call.
So, blackened, restored, finished, anything like that? You're starting to work on that stuff?
A lot of things just need maintaining. People put a lot of money and
Yeah.
effort into these and spend a lot of money on them, and they just need basic maintenance that isn't getting done. When you walk into these beautiful lobbies and you see rusty things, it's because we live in the Pacific Northwest, and water is not a friend of steel.
So, if anyone in the Pacific Northwest, they walk into a lobby and they're like, "Oh my God, their metal is gross." It doesn't even have to be the company themselves. They can just reach out to Laura and be like, "I was in this lobby." Give them a call. They need you.
Yes, please do.
We're gonna wrap up for today. Thank you so much for sharing your journey. I love how you were able to balance everything, and I'm sure it wasn't easy. I know telling it now, 25 years into your journey, it always sounds easier than it was, but you were able to weave through all the times as a mother and then on the floor and like back and forth with that flexibility. I mean, you're all lit up. You're smiling. You're excited about this new journey that you're
I'm
on.
really excited for the future.
For anyone that's curious, they're like, "Oh my God, yes, we need some metal finishing," or "I want to get in touch with Laura," I will put her contact details below, whatever she chooses for you, so you know that anything down below is totally safe to use to get a hold of Laura. And to all my machining friends out there, keep your spindles turning and earning.